Dear friends, today we will carry on with our talk on mind and its modification. In the last talk, I just tried to explain certain terms, sat, asat, and all these things, but the Vedanta is a very complex and deep subject. It cannot be explained within a 2 3 talks. So many things, so many terms are there which needs to be clarified, and because of those terms frequently used, people are not able to understand the real sense or significance of the Vedantic philosophy. Sometimes we find the philosophy more confusing rather than more easy to comprehend. So for that, because Vedanta is not different from Veda. In fact, Vedanta is based upon the ideology or the philosophy of the Upanishads, and Upanishads are the last part of the Vedic system. Vedanto Nam Upanishada Pramanam. Vedant means which depends upon the evidence, the theory or the philosophy that depends upon the evidence of the Upanishad. So that way, this Vedanta, I told, is no different from a Veda. It's one and the same thing. If we are able to understand Veda properly, we would be able to understand the Vedanta also. And as I told, the Upanishads are the last part or the final part or the end part of the Veda. So all the Upanishads, they belong to some or other branch of the Veda, just like Chandogya Upanishad, the most famous one. It pertains to Samveda. It is the branch of Samveda. Mundaka Upanishad, that is a branch of Atharva Veda. Aitareya Upanishad, it's the branch of Rig Veda. And similarly, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the branch of Yajurveda. So the Upanishads, they are the last part. But all these things will be discussed in the Vedic lectures. And here we would try to confine ourselves to the subject matter of the Vedanta. And as I told earlier, we will now deal with certain more terms, such as the terms sad and asad. Similarly, so many other terms have been used, and they are being used in a different way without understanding the real connotation or the real intended sense behind them. Just like we have the words mithya, Brahma, Satya, Sat. So many things are there. And so many Mahavakyas are there, Upanishadic Mahavakyas. Aham Brahmasmi, Tatattvamasi, Brahma Satyam Jagana Mithya, Ayam Atma Brahma, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, Pragyanam Brahma. And there are so many other popular concepts related to the philosophy of Upanishads or darshanas. Just like na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. There are terms prakriti, vikriti. So what all these terms they signify. That is most important thing. And these, as I told, I am repeatedly saying, these are the technical terms. You cannot translate them or these terms even in Hindi itself. You will have to maintain them as it is, just like proper nouns. And if you want to understand some their intended sense of these terms, then you will have to define these terms. So if you will translate the terms, you will be in total darkness, confusion, and everything will be flying out from the sphere of your knowledge. So I'll take up a few terms one by one, just like we are using the terms Brahma, Atma, Purusha, Ishvara, all these terms. The people mostly they apply these terms in the sense of Brahman, the supreme power. But all the times they cannot be applied in the sense of supreme power. Generally, most often than not, these terms are applied in the sense of soul. Brahma is also spirit, soul. Purusha is also soul. Ishvara is also being used to denote soul and the like. And if these terms are used to signify supreme power, then param or par word is prefixed to these terms. Just like Brahma is Atman and para Brahma, that is supreme soul. Purusha is Atman, Param Purusha, that is supreme power. Brahman you call it. Similarly, Atman is soul, human soul, and Paramatman, that is universal soul, supreme soul. Similarly, the term is Ishvara. Ishvara is most often than not used in the sense of Atmana, but Parameshwara, Param Ishvara, that is used in the sense of Paramatma. So there are 2-3 more confusing terms are there. Sometime we, the seekers of knowledge, they identify the term Bhagavan with the Paramatma. Bhagavan is a different and Paramatma is a different. Any human being, by dint of his or her virtues, may become Bhagavan, but he can never become Paramatman, Brahman. Brahman, everybody, every human being who is born from mother's womb, he cannot be Paramatman, he cannot be Brahman, he can be Bhagavan. Bhagavan, Bhag eva Bhagavan, who is endowed with the 6 powers, Aishwarya, Yasha, and all these things. Those things are known as Bhaga, and a person endowed with the Bhaga is known as Bhagavan. So when we call Bhagavan Krishna, that we are not talking about the Paramatmana, the Brahman we are not talking about. This we must take into mind if you want to learn the Vedanta and Vedas in proper and right perspective. Similarly, Brahma is most often than not used in the sense of Atmana, But when I will call it Brahmana or Parabrahma, that is Paramatman. So, these words, if you will apply this sense, the whole meaning will be clear and there will be no confusion. Now, I'll take one by one some Mahavakyas from Upanishad. Mundaka Upanishad, which is the part of the Atharva Veda, it clearly says, Ayam Atma Brahma, means this soul, this individual soul is Brahman, Brahma. This individual soul is Brahma. He gives the meaning clearly there itself. And when in Vrihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya says, Aham Brahmasmi, he is also talking about Atman. The context there belongs to the Atman. And he says, Aham Brahmasmi. My identity of a human being is Atman, not the body. He wants to say that. Aham Brahmasmi. He doesn't want to say that I am the Supreme Lord. No, nobody can say it. And Yoga Vasishtha says it clearly, if somebody wants to say that he is Supreme Lord, he has no other way, but he will directly go to the Naraka, the lower spaces, because he doesn't have any knowledge. So when the Yajnavalkya says, Aham Brahmasmi, that means me as a human being is soul, is spirit, is the spiritual matter, not as the physical or material thing, is not the material or the body. I am the spirit, I am the soul, and I am not the body. So he wants to say that the human beings, they can be identified with the soul and not with this material body. Similarly, in Chandogya Upanishad, in the context of Shvetaketu, the same words have been repeated, Tattvamasi, when he asks, who am I with all these five senses, this intellect, mind? Who am I with this skin and all these things? The seer says, Tattvamasi. You are that soul. You are not the matter. You are not the sense. You are not the mind. You cannot identify yourself with the intellect, but you will have to identify yourself with the soul. So a human being is a soul, is not the part of the Prakriti, this outer material world, but he is the part of the inner spiritual power, that is soul. And the one more very beautiful sentence has been used always. Brahma Satyam Jagana Mithya. What does this mean? This sentence also means that Brahma Satyam, this Brahma, this Atman is a Satya, is a Sata, and this Jagata, this body is Asat. As I told in my earlier lecture, these are technical terms. Asat means this material world, and Sat means the spiritual world or the Atman. When we talk about avidya, that means the study of this material world is known as avidya, but the study of the spiritual world is known as vidya. So, when we are pursuing avidya, through pursuance of avidya, you cannot know vidya. Mind it, this is most important. If you are pursuing the studies of avidya, so that study will never lead you to the sata or the vidya. For the study of sata, or Atman, Brahman, Parabrahman, you will have to pursue Vidya. And today what we are all doing, we are doing the study of Avidya. We are just trying to understand the asata, this material world. We cannot, don't call it as unreality or like all these confusing terms. This, we want to unravel the mysteries of the material world through avidya, through the knowledge of avidya. So this sentence, Brahma Satyam Jagana Mithya, again it has the same meaning. This Atman is the Sata, and this Jagata or this body is Asata, just like Sat and Asat. So Mithya means Asat. Mithya is nothing, nothing else. Mithya means the part of a Prakriti or Asata. That is why in Sankhya philosopher and in Yoga Vasishtha also, repeatedly it has been said, Na sato vidyate bhavo. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. The sat cannot become asat. Sat can never be asat. And asat can never be sat. You can't change them. Sat will always remain as sat, and asat will always remain as asat. But generally the scholars, they translate it as na sat sato vidyate bhavo. Means sat can never, sat is always existent and asat can never be existent. But this is not that sense. He wants to say na sato bhavo na vidyate. The sat cannot become asat. Means this spiritual, this soul can never become matter, and that matter can never be converted into the soul. These are the two different aspects. You will have to deal it. And similarly, there are the words Prakriti and Vikriti. We must understand it also. Prakriti is the parental part, and what is born of Prakriti, that is known as a Vikriti. We call it Vikriti, but the modern science calls it evolution. We call it devolution. If somebody is born of somebody, then the parental part is known as a Prakriti, and the part that is taking birth, that is known as a Vikriti. Just like the parents and the children. Children are the Vikriti of their parents. So that Prakriti is Sata, and the parents in that sense, in the sense of parent and children, the parents are Sata and children are Asata. But again the children, they give birth to their children, so they become, for those children they become the Sat part and their children become Asata. But this doesn't apply. This parent and this whole relationship, this is both. This is Prakriti and a Vikriti. This is both Prakriti and a Vikriti. But Brahman, when the question of creation arises with Brahman, so Brahman is the Prakriti. And this creation, this material part is a Vikriti, evolution, devolution. That is why in Vedantic texts, always the creation of a Brahman has been, a simile has been given, creation of the Brahman's creation, that has been, a simile of that has been given with the simile of the spider and cobweb. He says, just like the spider creates the cobweb, similarly the world, this world comes out of Brahman as the cobweb comes out of the spider, that cobweb, that is asata, and for in that sense the spider is sata. Similarly, when the creation emanates from Brahman, so that para Brahman is sata, and this material world is asata or mithya, you can say. There is another word. It says, when Brahman associates himself with Maya, he takes birth. So what is that Brahman? Not supreme power, that soul. When the soul, due to its sanskaras, associates it with the Prakriti, it takes birth in the form of human being or animal beings or any creatures. So that Brahman, when associates with Maya, Maya here, Prakriti. Prakriti, this matter, this physical world that you have in your Chitta Akasha. When you associate with the Akash of your Chitta, then you will take birth as a creature, as a human being, animal being, or any other things like that. So this is the whole story goes on. It depends upon you. How do you think yourself? How do you associate yourself? And one more thing, most important thing, sometime these words, Brahma Satyam Jagana Mithya, Aham Brahmasmi Tatatvamasi, these words are not for teaching and preaching. You cannot understand it. And Yoga Vasisht raises a strong objection. Teaching these words to the persons who have not realized the self. This is a question, this is the teaching that must be imparted to a person who has realized his self, or who has realized Brahman. The layman, if you are repeating these sentences to the layman, it has no meaning. In Yoga Vasisht, in a Sthiti Prakarana, very beautifully this has been described. It says, Brahma sarvam jagaditi vaktum najyasyaha. Sarvam idam Brahma. These things are not to be told to the ajna, to the fools, to the laymen, to the innocents. It has no meaning for them. Merely repeating words, nobody becomes Brahman. It is a matter of realization. How do you realize? It's a matter of your experience. Without experiencing yourself that you are not this body, you are the part of that spirit, you are the pure spirit, you cannot understand these ideas. This would be a mere information. It cannot translate into the actual sense. So, further he says, Tapo vidyan ananubhave sah tad etanubhutavana. Without tapaha, without yoga, and without knowing vidya, pursuing vidya, tad etadev anubhutavana. Without the knowledge, without the realization of self and pursuing vidya, nobody can understand it. It will just remain a sentence. So it's not so easy. It's not an easy task for a layman. It is for the practice. Those seekers, high-level seekers, when you will talk these sentences to them, tell these sentences to them, they will understand it. Not even a physicist can understand the knowledge of this. So, an experience of a yogi, an experience of a mystic can be verified by the yogi or the mystic himself. No scientist in the lab can verify it. No intellectual, no philosopher can verify it. So when I am saying all these things, it's not so easy for everybody to understand. It's a matter of realization. Brahma sarvam jagaditi vaktum najyasya yujyate. It's not proper to tell all these things to the persons who are not self-realized, who have not realized themselves or realized Brahman. Tapo vidya ananubhave sahtadi tad anubhutavan. Without the realization and without the knowledge of vidya, all the time you are pursuing a vidya and you want to understand who you are, it is not possible. You will have to pursue vidya and you will have to do some practice of yoga in your dharana, dhyan and samadhi. You will go higher up to those stages. Then only you will be able to realize that you are Brahman. You are the pure soul. You are not the body, mind or thought. At one more place, Yoga Vasishtha gives one warning. He says, Idam jagad asad brahma satyamityeva vaktiyaha tad unmattam ivo namatto vimodho api hasatyalam. If you start repeating these words, that this word is a asata or a mithya and Brahma is a satya, to the layman, people will laugh at you, what you are talking about. You will become a laughing stone. So don't utter these words to the layman or to those persons who are just merely pursuing avidya. It is not their subject matter. A person who is enjoying avidya and enjoying this material world and pursuing avidya, it is not their subject matter. That is why the Upanishad, Ishavasya Upanishad says, Hiranyamayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukham tattvam apavrinu satya dharmaya drishtaya. The truth is hidden, the sat is hidden by the money, by the gold, by the material things. This material world has covered or concealed the sat part, this atmana. Tattvam apavrinu. You will have to uncover that matter from your soul. Means how to uncover it? You will have to pursue vidya. Satya dharmaya drishtaye.